All right. So shall I spotlight myself? There we are. Welcome everyone to February's edition of the Do Tell Story Swap. It is really wonderful to be back. I was missing in action for 2 months, and I heard all the meetings were really good, but it's really wonderful to see everyone again. My name is Brandon, and I'm one of the hosts of the Do Tell Swap. I saw that Kenneth Foster is here and Elaine Stanley, our original founders of our swap more than 10 years ago. If you remember in our history, this swap started in Kenneth's garage, where they covered up an oil stain in the middle with a carpet and gathered once a month for stories. And here we are now on Zoom, led by our fearless leaders, Meg Brown and Katie Mangan, and we're still going strong. So welcome. And basically the way this works is whether we're in person or virtual like we are now, we tell 5 to 7 minute stories, no notes, and they can be traditional or personal, but we really, really value listeners too. And if you check out our website, you'll see that one of the captions right on the landing page is listeners wanted. And we believe here at the Do Tell Swap that every good storyteller begins as a good listener. So you let Katie know if you have a story, but if you don't, you are very, very welcome here. And we encourage people to come and listen. What would a story be without the listener? I don't think there's too much more business other than the format. We go through our roster of tellers, people who have signed up, and those who have asked for extra time usually go closer to the end of the list. Midway through, there's normally a short break. You know where your bathroom is, you know where to get a hot cup of tea or whatever you're going to be having. And of course, when we come back, we have some announcements, usually Meg and Katie and other people who have things going on, share all the different events that are happening in the Bay Area and of course beyond. We have people from New York and the proud state of Washington I saw as well. And Kenneth, where are you zooming in from these days? I don't even know.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I'm in Utah.
Utah.
Wow.
Okay, so we've gone totally national. We haven't quite gone international yet, but we're getting there. Anyway, welcome everyone. And I think without any further ado, I'm going to call to the virtual stage, Beth, who is our first teller. And Katie, are you going to spotlight her? Very good. Hi, Beth. Take it away.
Well, happy Valentine's Day to everyone. And my story is very short. It's my first telling also. It is an old Appalachian tale compiled by Richard Chase. Now, in the piney woods, there was a little cabin, and there lived there an old woman, an old man, a little girl, and a little boy, and a very, very frisky pet squirrel who ran back and forth on the fireboard, always looking for a little crumb to eat, of course. Well, the old woman was known for her biscuits. They were light and fluffy, but we all know you need leavening to make your biscuits rise. She opened her cupboard. She was hankering for some biscuits right then. No sody, nothing, no leavening at all. So she sent her little boy, you go down to the shop. It wasn't too far away, but far enough that it was a bit of a trek. And so little boy trotted out the door, so excited. Over the bridge he went, into the shop, got the sody saleratus, singing all along, sody, sody, sody saleratus, thinking and practically drooling, thinking about those biscuits. He was not looking ahead. And there on the bridge, waiting, was this great big bear with a mouth as big as a cave. And the old bear said, little boy, I'm going to eat you and your sody saleratus too. And he did, in one big gulp. Well, he didn't return to the cabin. The old woman was waiting. She had her flour out, she had her lard, but she didn't have any soda. And so she sent the little girl, go on down to that shop and find out what's happening. The little girl, she skipped on out the door, having a good old time. It was pretty outside. She looked around here and she went over the bridge skipping, and she got to the shopkeeper, and he said, I've already sent the little boy home with the soda saleratus. So little girl, she turned around, headed on back. Of course, she got to that bridge, and we all know the big bear was waiting right there. That big bear said, I ate up the little boy and his soda saleratus too, and now I'm going to eat you. And the little girl didn't have a chance. I mean, one big gulp, and she was gone. No one returned home for a long time. And the old woman was getting rather impatient, and the old man was getting quite hungry, and the squirrel was getting frantic. So the old woman sent the old man. Now he wasn't as fast. He could barely amble out the door, but down the path he went, across the bridge and into the shop. Shopkeeper just scratched his head and said, I've already sent home little boy with the soda saleratus. Little girl came by too. Maybe they stopped to play on the side of the road. The old man turned around, ambled on out the door, walked on down the path, hit the bridge. Great big bear showed up and said, old man, I've eaten up little girl and the little boy, the soda saleratus too, and now I'm going to eat you. Just like that, the old man disappeared right down the gullet. One big swallow. It was getting a little bit difficult at the cabin. That old woman was starving for her biscuits. You can't make biscuits without soda. Absolutely not. So she got to the point where she said, I'll have to go myself. If I want anything done, I have to do it myself. So she took her cane and she limped on down the path, click clock, click clock, click clock, over the bridge, tock, 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 into the shop. Shopkeeper was scratching his head. I said, I don't know. I just don't understand it. They've all been here, little boy, little girl, old man. They have the soda. They can't all be on the side of the road playing. And the old woman thought she'd better go back, very carefully looking. She turned around, headed on back the path, got to the bridge, got down to the middle of the bridge, and the bear leaned up over the side with his great big mouth. Old woman, I've eaten the old man and the little girl and the little boy and the soda saleratus too. Now I'm going to eat you. And the old woman disappeared like that. She couldn't move fast enough. Back in the cabin, that squirrel was going back and forth, across the table, across the fireboard, across the floor, until he pushed the door open just enough and scampered on out just as fast as a squirrel could go, thinking about those biscuits, hungry as it could be. It got to the bridge, over the bridge, into the shop, chitter, like squirrels can do, until it could look up at the shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper knew this pet squirrel and said, they've all gone home. They've all gone. I don't know what could have happened. Well, squirrel just turned right around, looking back, looking forth, looking up, looking down for everybody, got to the bridge. The big bear leaned up and said, squirrel, I'm eating the little boy, his soda saleratus, and the little girl, and the old man, and the old woman too. I'm going to eat you now. Well, that was a lot of words all at once. And the squirrel had plenty of time to climb up the nearest tree. Halfway up he went. Well, the bear wasn't going to be denied squirrel for dessert. And right after the squirrel came the bear, big old claws and all, climbing the tree. But the squirrel, of course, got a little further up. Up went the bear, further up went the bear. Squirrel went out on the limb. The bear could handle the limb. And then the squirrel got to the edge of that limb and leaped to the next tree. If you could leap with your little legs, I can leap with my great big legs, said the bear. And when the bear took off, the limb broke. Whoa, and he was up so high when he landed on his stomach. Out popped the little old woman, the little old man, the little girl, and the little boy, and the box of soda too. And so old woman said, grab that soda saleratus. They made it home to their house, where old woman fixed the best batch of biscuits that maybe have ever been made. And to reward that squirrel, the squirrel was sitting there waiting so patiently. She took the first biscuit and she broke it in apart and blew on it to cool it down, handed it to that squirrel. And squirrel was so hungry, ended up eating 2 full biscuits. Right. And that's the end of that. Sodi Saleratus, unknown author, but compiled by folklorist Richard Chase.
Yay. Wow, that was a wonderful way to start our evening. Thank you so much, Beth. I find it really interesting the bear let them go to the store and only accosted them on the way home each time.
It makes for the story to have a little more plot.
Right,
Otherwise, it would
yeah,
end rather
no.
quickly.
He probably said to himself, "Oh, I'm going to get that on the way back." That was
They do that in
wonderful.
these folk tales.
Yeah, I like your pronunciation of soda too.
Well, it was spelled out Sody, S-O-D-Y, and then Saleratus, which much mean some of the chemical stuff in it. And I have no Appalachian
Yeah,
accent, so I couldn't pretend.
my relatives in the Ozarks say sody, and I remember one of them, "How come I don't have a soda to sip, a sody to sip on?" I just remember them saying that. Anyway, thank you. What a great kickoff that was. Thank you so much, Beth. And Vicky has entered our waiting room. Hi, Vicky. Welcome. Terrific. Well, we're off to a great start. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. It just occurred to me, it is Valentine's Day. And next up, all the way from New York, please welcome Bev to our virtual stage.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see everyone here. The name of my story is Rags. It's a true story. Okay, you ready? It was in June. There was only 2 weeks left of school. It had been a hot, muggy few days and had rained all night. So when I came to school, I opened up the 3 big, huge windows in the back of the room of the 1920 school building because we had no air condition. I wanted to kind of air out the humidity. The kids came in and everyone's sitting and they were working away. And Jimmy had to sharpen his pencil. And he goes to the back of the room where the big windows are and where the sharpener is on the shelf. And he starts sharpening his pencil. And all of a sudden, Rags, oh my God, my dog, he must have followed to me to school. He's lost. He's in our backyard. He's going to get killed by the road with all the cars. We have to save my dog, Rags. Everyone ran to the back, including me. And there was a dog. It was a ragdoll dog. And it was rolling over in the puddles and the mud from the night before. And he's turned around. What are you going to do? We have to save him. So foolishly, I did not think of the consequences. I said, well, go out and get him and bring him into the room. So he goes, oh, thank you, thank you. So he runs out the door to the side of the building and runs to the back. And we're all looking out at the window to see if he can catch Rags. And Rags sees him and this dog runs and jumps on him. And now he's covered with mud and water. And he drags him in with the collar. And we see him going around the side of the school. So I open the door and I go, come on. He opens our door and he hurries up the one flight of stairs and he walks into the classroom. And then it happened. He let go of the collar and Rags, being such a friendly dog, started going up to everyone and everyone was petting him and getting wet and muddier. And then it happened. The dog shook and all the mud and all the water went all over the kids, me, Jimmy, the floor. And then, oh, have you ever smelled a wet dog? Ugh. And then I said, Jimmy, get your dog and sit in a chair and hold him tight. And he did. He went over and he dragged him next to my desk to a chair and he sat there. And the dog laid there panting. And Jimmy said, so what are we going to do now, Miss Schwartz? And I said to him, Jimmy, I hadn't even thought of what we're going to do next. Give me a minute. I have to calm down. To be honest, I didn't have a plan. And then I thought, Jimmy, is your mother home? Yes. Does she have a car today? Yes. Okay. Plan. Go to the secretary's room where the phone is. Ask her to call you have to call your mother. You forgot your lunch or something. Okay. And tell your mother to meet you at the side of the school and pick up Rags. Oh, that's a great idea. And everyone applauded. I'm going, oh God, I hope it works. Well, he went. About 5 minutes later, he comes back and he said, I made the phone call. I don't think the secretary heard me. And my mom's going to pick us up on the side and take the dog home. I'm to wait and sit on the stoop next to the door of the school. Okay. So I go, okay. I look both ways. There's nobody in the hallway. Okay, go, Jimmy, go. And he runs down with the dog, closes the door, and there he is sitting on the side of the school waiting for his mother. Oh, I was so relieved. The class was laughing and thought they were having a great time. But I was looking at a room filled with mud, water, and boy, did it smell. So we're all sitting there, and all of a sudden, the door opens up. And that's the principal. I hear you have a dog in this school. Dogs aren't allowed in this school. Where's that dog? We're going to let it out right now. Well, the dog wasn't in my room, so I didn't want to lie, but there's no dog in this room. And the kids are going, there's no dog. I smell a dog. Look at I can see there is paw prints. And he opens up the closet. He opened up one door. They all opened up. It was an old school. He looked in the closet. Where's that dog? So he goes to one corner. He goes to looks out the window. He goes behind some other shelves. He goes, I'm going to find that dog. And when I find it, I'm going to let it out of that school. No dogs are allowed. I'll be talking to you later, Miss Schwartz, and all of you too. The rest of you are all in trouble. And he runs out the door and he slams it. And there we are, sitting speechless. One kid said, do you think you'll get fired, Miss Schwartz? I don't know. Are we also in trouble? Said one kid. I don't know. I was like panicking now. What happens if he did find Jimmy outside? What would he do with the dog? Would he just let it go? Maybe the dog would get hit by a car. But it was more important to make sure we saved that dog, in my mind. Well, we were sitting in silence. You could have heard a pin drop. And then the door starts opening slowly. And we're all looking very closely at the door. And in comes Jimmy. My mom picked up the dog. We saved Rags. And we're still quiet. And he goes, well, what's wrong? Mr. DeFrank, our principal, found out we have a dog in the school and he's looking for the dog and we're in trouble, he told us. Oh, I'm so sorry, but we saved my dog. Yeah, but Miss Schwartz might lose her job, another child said. Oh, I said, well, look it. We have 2 weeks left in school. Let's stay as far away as we can from the principal, unless he wants to talk to us. We saved the dog, and that was our goal. And if we can just stay away from Mr. DeFrank for the rest of the year, maybe no one will get in trouble again. Well, if we saw him coming down the hallway, coming towards us, we just turned around and walked the other way usually. And he never came and talked to me or any of the kids about what happened. Maybe he decided to let sleeping dogs lay. The end.
Wonderful, Bev. Let sleeping dogs lie. And I think out of sight, out of mind is another one that would work there too.
Right. And that's
I
a true
learned to just
story.
avoid the every time I walk past the head of school, I swear she thinks of something, Brandon, can you come in here a second?
Yeah. And you know what I
just avoid it.
forgot? We said the secretary tattled on us, because I forgot that, and that's how it happened. She overheard and told the principal there was a dog in my classroom. That's how he knew to come.
I love how
forget that.
concerned your students were. You're gonna get fired. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Bev.
You're welcome.
Well, we got off to a great start now with 2 wonderful stories. And next up, we have Nancy. And Nancy, was that right? You did not.
No, sorry. We're going to put Nancy towards the end. I'm going to talk about the break.
Okay.
I'm so sorry, Brandon. So could we
right.
go on to Elaine?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
So
Sorry about that.
we'll go on. We're in for a treat. One of the founders of the Do Tell story swap, Elaine Stanley. Please welcome Elaine.
Hello. Well, my story begins in springtime, which it isn't quite springtime yet, but springtime comes late to Piscataquis County, Maine. And in this part of the country, there is one little fellow who always makes sure he's the first snake to hatch out. So he can catch all the little snakes as they hatch out, pull them together, and he touts himself their teacher and says, "You are proud Piscataquis County snakes, and you have a right to hiss anywhere in Piscataquis County you want. But I want you to be proud, so go out and practice and let me see what you're doing. We'll correct it and you'll be the best." Well, pretty soon he has all those little snakes all over town. They're hissing on the trees. They're hissing on the curbstones. They're hissing on the tires of cars and trucks. They're having a ball. But one snake, one little junior guy, went way down the main street and off to the back of Mrs. Potts' yard. And there in her backyard, she had a pit, a big pit. So he called all the junior snakes to come. "Come on, look what Mrs. Potts has. She has a pit. We could line up around the pit and practice our hissing." So they did. They started practicing who could hiss the farthest, who could hiss the loudest, who could hiss the longest, who could hiss the most. And they just kept coming up with more and more ideas of how they could hiss. They would practice stances, trying different stances, trying different angles of their head to get the hiss out. Well, Mrs. Potts came out and she was furious. She jumped up and down and said, "You get out of my yard. I don't want you in here, get." So all those little junior snakes were slithering back to town, feeling so bad. And Senior Snake saw him coming. He said, "Now, what is wrong with you today? You're not supposed to be slithering. You're supposed to be out practicing hissing. What's the matter with you?" And they said, "Well, we were practicing, but Mrs. Potts wouldn't let us hiss in her pit." He says, "What do you mean?" And the little junior snake says, "Well, we discovered Mrs. Potts had this wonderful pit in her backyard, and we lined up around the pit. We were hissing and having contests, and she came out and said we couldn't do that." He said, "Yes, you can. You are proud Piscataquis County snakes, and you can hiss anywhere in Piscataquis County you want. You go ahead and hiss there if you want." Well, of course, that was the place they wanted to go. So they went back to Mrs. Potts' place and they were having a ball, hissing all over her pit. Who could hiss the highest? Who could hiss the lowest? Who could hiss the longest? I mean, they were amazing. And Mrs. Potts came out and she threw a hissy fit. And there come the little junior snakes back to town, crawling on their bellies. And there's Senior Snake saying, "Now what? Now what's wrong?" And the little snake said, "Well, Mrs. Potts wouldn't let us hiss in her pit, even though we told her that you said we could hiss anywhere in Piscataquis County we want." And he said, "I don't believe the nerve of that woman. Why, she has no right to not let you hiss in her pit, because I knew Mrs. Potts before she ever had a pit to hiss in."
Oh, Elaine.
Springtime done.
Elaine, will you say the name of the county again?
Piscataquis County.
Is that a real place?
I learned this story from somebody who was from Maine. She
Okay.
spoke with quite a thick Maine's accent.
Mayonnaise.
So I'm not sure if it's a real place or not. I
Yeah.
have never looked at a map of Maine. to
Well,
see
it
if I can
certainly
find it.
fits into the sibilance of the entire story. What wonderful wordplay.
It is fun. Yeah.
Really, really fun. Thank you so much, Elaine. And
Thank
it's
you.
it's so wonderful that you're here and you are being followed by our next teller, who is the other founder. It's Elaine and Kenneth again at the Do Tell Swap. So I'm really excited, and I think it's neat that they're back to back. So please welcome Kenneth Foster.
And somebody's got to bring that there. Nope, not quite.
There you go.
There I am. Yeah. I've got my jacket on because it's only 20 degrees out. So this story is a 1907 story. And 1907, things were a lot different in the world. Not many jobs around, and the jobs that were there were mostly held by men. And in the cities, most of the jobs were factory jobs or menial labor jobs. And this one store owner who owned a very large mercantile store decided that he wanted someone other than an older man to work in his store. And as he thought about it, he thought, I would like a boy that I could train and that he would stay with the store at some time. And so the more he thought about it, he said, this is a great idea. And so he put an ad in the newspaper, searching for a boy between the age of 12 and 15. And he thought that was a great age to train someone in the mercantile business. And so on the day of the interview, 50 boys showed up. Now, there were all kinds of boys. There were tall boys, there were short boys, there were older boys, young boys. There were a lot of boys. And most of them had letters of introduction or letters of references. And as the store owner looked at this mob of boys, he thought, there's no way that I'm going to get through all this. And so he asked his store manager to help go through the interviews and to sit with them. Now, some of the interviews were quite long, and some of the interviews were very short. But at the end of the day, they got through all the interviews. And so the store owner and the store manager sat down together to decide who they want to choose. Now, the manager, he had 3 or 4 boys picked out. He had their letters of references and thought, these are the guys that I want. But the store owner said, you know what? I know who I want to hire. The store manager said, what? You haven't even looked at all these letters. He says, no. I know exactly who I want to hire. Well, who do you want to hire? Well, that boy we interviewed late in the afternoon, he had a gray shirt on and shiny shoes. The store manager says, You mean the boy with the curly hair? He says, yes, that's the one. Well, he had no references at all. And the store owner says, no, I disagree. He had many references. What do you mean he had many references? Well, when he came in, he wiped his feet and took off his cap. That showed me he had respect. And when he closed the door, he did it gently. That showed me that he was careful And when he went to take a seat, there was only one chair left. And that older gentleman came in to see you. And the boy got up and gave his chair to that older gentleman. That showed me that he was thoughtful and kind. And then he picked up that book that I deliberately put on the floor, and he put it back on the table. That showed me that he was careful with other people's possessions. He waited quietly for his turn. That showed me he was patient. His clothes were clean and brushed. Even though he had curly hair, it was combed. And when we finally sat down to talk to him, he answered the questions promptly and clearly. That showed me that he was bright and well-spoken. I believe a boy is more than words on a paper. The store manager thought about that for a while and said, yes, I agree. And so they hired the boy. And in no time at all, he became a fine young man and the assistant manager of the store. So the question is, after this story, are you more than words on a piece of paper?
Wow. Thank you so much, Kenneth.
You know, I like to tend toward trait stories, so character traits, there you go.
Character traits, yeah. And where did you get this story, or did you create it, or?
No, it was from an old children's book of stories that date back to 1907. So,
And that's when the story took place.
yes. And of course, in these books, they taught all of those kinds of traits. And I don't think we teach them enough today.
I can guarantee you we don't.
That's it. So anyway, there it is.
I bet I had all 49 other interviewers in my class today. Oh my goodness. Well, what a treat to hear a story from you, Kenneth. Thank you so much.
You're
That was
welcome.
really wonderful to have Elaine and Kenneth back to back. All right. Well, we're getting into the hour, but we're not quite at where we normally take a break. And so I am going to keep going ahead, and we're in for another treat. Please welcome to the virtual stage, Sharon Elwell.
This is one of the stories that the folk tales around the world that were curated by Catherine Fairley. And this one is a story of a teacup that fed 1,000 people for a whole year. Many, many years ago in Japan, there was a samurai warrior named Shigen. He was known for his swordsmanship, but for the yin side of his personality, he collected teacups like this one, ancient and beautiful and expensive and fragile, and his expertise was well known. One day, when Shigen was in town, he went into a tea shop to have a cup of tea, and he picked up the teacup he was given and looked at it intently for a long time, and then he suddenly put it down and left. And another customer in the shop had observed that. So he went up to the shop owner and said, I would like to purchase that teacup. And the owner said, "Oh, that's part of our regular service. There's nothing special about that cup." And the man said, "I think there was, because Shijin observed it, admired it for a long time. And there must be something about it that you or I don't know. I would be willing to pay you 1 koku for that teacup." Now, you don't know that, but a koku is enough rice to feed one person for a whole year. And so the shop owner said, "Oh, wonderful, I'll take that deal. You're welcome to the cup." And away went the man, and he went to all the logical places in town, to other shops, to try to sell the cup that he had bought and imagined to be valuable. And nobody had the slightest interest in it. And he said, "But Shijin admired this cup." And people said, "I don't care if the emperor himself admired it. There's nothing unusual or interesting about that cup. It wouldn't be worth 1 gram of rice to me." And so he worked at that all afternoon, and he was frustrated. And so he actually went to Shijin's home and knocked on the door and said, "You misled me." Shijin reached for his sword. And he said, "No, and I don't mean that you did it on purpose. But when I saw you admire that cup, I knew it must have some value. And I bought it. I tried to resell it, and no one was interested." And she just laughed and said, "I wasn't admiring that cup. I was disgusted by it. It's really poorly made, and it has a hairline crack that you don't even see. If I held it for a minute, my hand filled up with tea. But I'm sorry that my actions led you to waste your afternoon. Let me buy the cup back from you, and I will pay you 10 koku for it." Well, the man was happy then, and away he went. And Shijin put the cup in his collection, and every time he saw it, he chuckled to himself. But it wasn't long before another young man came to the door. And he said, "I understand that you have a cup here for which you paid 10 koku. Now, I would love to purchase that cup. I'm on my way to be interviewed by the emperor, and I want to make a good impression. So I must give him a wonderful gift, and I can't think of anything better than that cup." And Shijin thought, "Oh, this is a wonderful cup to make an impression. This is the world's greatest cup. It actually belonged to the Buddha. This was the last cup that touched his lips before he achieved enlightenment and went to heaven. This is such a marvelous cup. I couldn't sell it to you for less than 100 koku." And the young man said, "It's worth that to me. I'll take it. I'll pay it." And so he took that cup, and off he went to see the emperor. Well, sometime later, Shijin was walking in the emperor's garden with him, and cherry blossoms were falling around them like pink snow. And the emperor said, "I had a visit from a strange young man a few days ago. He had a cup that looked to me like an ordinary cup, but he said that he had had to wade through blizzards and climb mountains and kill dragons to get this cup. So he said, you have more expertise in this area than I do. Would you look at it for me and see what you think? And so Shijin went in and looked, and sure enough, it was the same cup. And he told the emperor all that had happened. So the emperor went into his art studio and crumbled up some ink and took out his brush that had tiny, fine hairs. And he composed a haiku that he wrote on the side of the cup. And the haiku was, cherry blossoms fall, there's the 5 verses, 5 syllables, from the Buddha's own teacup, gift from emperor. and he gave the cup back to Shijen. Well, Shijen put that now in pride of place in his collection right in the middle, and he was so thrilled with that cup. But sure enough, soon another young man came to the door. And this one said, I have heard that you have a teacup that was written on by the emperor himself. And Shijen said, I do. Would you like to see it? And so he showed it to the young man. And the young man said, I would pay any price to have that cup. And Shijen said, you know, it's really a poorly made cup. It's pretty much worthless, and it doesn't even hold tea. And the young man said, oh, I don't collect cups, I collect haiku. And for me, a poem that was written by the emperor himself would be priceless. I will give you 1,000 koku for that cup. And Shijen said, it's a gift. I can't sell a gift. But if you would put 1,000 koku into the granary to feed the poor and needy, then I could give you this cup as a gift. And that's how it happened, that one single cup fed 1,000 people for a whole year.
Wow, that was wonderful. Oh, Sharon. I love just kind of resting in your confidence as you tell stories. It's just really wonderful. I'm sure others know what I'm trying to say. I'm not sure myself, but and just the cultural knowledge in that story. You have what haiku is, and you illustrated it, and the idea of a koku is in that story repeated over and over again. It would be a great story for a classroom. And I'm sure my koku is bigger than most. I eat a lot. I wonder if, I don't know, some people must have bigger kokus. But anyway, thank you so much for that. That was a real gem. And the fact that it comes from Catherine Fairley, who is was a longtime member of Do Tell and the Storytelling Association of California as well. And we might as well say right now that there is a featured Catherine Fairley story on our website now that will be rotated every month. And Sharon has curated all of these tales. Meg scanned them and Sharon retyped them all. And we're really going to try to turn it into something of an archive in Catherine's honor. The goal would be to be able to search it under topics, and that's a dream. Anyway, thank you so much, Sharon. You've illustrated exactly what is so wonderful, not only about yourself, but also Catherine, and her memory lives on.
Thank you, Brenda.
Yeah. Well, I think we have time for one more. So let's bring Vicki to our virtual stage. I believe that's Vicki Ness, right?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Vicki.
Hi. This is a story that I'm just practicing, and 2 people I know have already heard it, and I apologize ahead of time. So there we go. She stitched a quilt with words, piecing together patches of funny stories, of jokes, of kind sentiments and biblical passages and warm memories and racy gossip around the neighborhood and just anything that would wrap up her husband of 53 years in something warm and bright and normal. He who kept seesawing between mind-numbing painkillers and acid bright pain, She wanted to protect him, and with her silver sharp needle of wit and the strong thread of determination, she made him a quilt of words. But unfortunately, he could feel the fear and the desperation behind every word, and it cut his sensitive skin, and he threw the bed covers off and felt around for his shuffle down slippers and his ratty old robe, which he wrapped around himself tight. And he walked down the hallway and out the back door, leaving the door open. And he sat on the bench out on the back porch. She stood in the empty bedroom, hearing the echo of silence closing in on her. So she specifically walked loudly down the hallway so she could hear echoes into the living room, which had memories of so many holiday parties and family get-togethers and so much life. And now it was static and quiet. And all she could think was, who lives here now? Whose living room is this? And that frightened her still more. So she grabbed what she called the big guns, her violin. She could play the violin and darkness would turn to light and sorrow would turn to joy. So she started playing a beautiful old Irish folk song that ran deep with longing and love and eventually joy. It spun around her, shimmering like a river in a dark woods, shimmering around her, shimmering higher and higher. She played so beautifully. And then she took that tune and she twisted it. And she twisted the notes until they popped out into a jig. Wonderful, lively notes that flew around the room, little flutter butterflies of iridescent color, every note a different color, fluttering here and there. Out the back door they went and surrounded her husband. Hope, joy, get up and dance. It made him even angrier, and he swiped them away, and he got up painfully and stumped down the steps, leaning heavily on the banister across the dew-soaked early morning grass. Still dark, still chill, but he rickety ratcheted the old aluminum lawn chair, rusty and dirty, but he sat it down in the grass, and then he sat down heavily. Then he waited for the pain to subside. And then he looked around. Now he, on the cusp of hospice, had decided to no longer look or feel or taste. His impending death would mean that he would not only lose living, which he didn't care that much about, he cared about losing loving. The sound of fall leaves rustling down a sidewalk, the look of his wife's face with her wicked sense of humor, the smell of coffee in the morning. So he refused that. He left on his own terms. He refused to taste or smell or look. But this time he couldn't help but take in the garden, their last garden. The one they had tilled and seeded and watered and weeded. But now this morning, early morning in late summer, it was pretty desolate. All the vegetables had been gathered in except for a couple of puckery tomatoes that were clinging to half-dead vines. And then there were the dahlias. Oh, they loved the dahlias. They were so proud of them. Dinner plate-sized starbursts of color filled their house. But that season was gone. And now all that remained were decapitated stalks, slender and dark as garden stakes, supporting nothing. They even took in the herbs, twined them up, and hung them in the pantry to dry. There was nothing. Nothing, well, yes, there was something. Those awkward, gawky, gate-crashing, forever adolescent, boisterous, latecomers to every garden party, the sunflowers. Carelessly sown, intermittently watered, and basically ignored, they pushed through the earth with their fat stems and their thick, broad leaves, and they elbowed each other aside as they grew, and they looked over each other's shoulders. And now they were looking toward the house, waiting for the sun to come up over the roof. And in the drowsy early morning mist, their colors muted, he picked one sunflower to talk to. One. And he broke out of his stoic silence to say out loud, "What the hell does she think she's doing? Does she know I'm dying? Has she figured that out yet? I don't want cheerful." And his anger ignited into a fireball and just as quickly died out into a few black, wrinkled petals of ash that blew away. And all of that revealing what was behind that fireball of anger, which was the sharp blade of fear. And to that he addressed silently a question. Is she going to love me when this disease disfigures our relationship? When she's a nursemaid and I'm a squalling baby? When my pain makes me impossible to be around? And it's getting there. How about when she no longer recognizes the man she married? Could anybody love that? Could anybody love a stranger like that? And that's what I'll be? Could she? Will she? And then he raised his eyes, ostensibly to look for early morning clouds in the sky, and pulled his bathrobe closer, and because he discovered by looking up the tears wouldn't fall. So in silence he watched. And then he heard a rickety ratchety next to him, and it was the second rusty aluminum lawn chair opening up and being positioned very carefully on the uneven ground. She came and sat down carefully. She was no spring chicken either, you know, looking at the garden. And presently her warm hand covered his cool one. And in that moment, he heard in his heart, not a voice, but from the heart, "Yes, my love, I will. Yes, oh yes, I will." And so they sat alone together, balancing on their rickety perches until the sun rose up over the back of the house and warmed their shoulders and brought peace to their souls. So luxurious a feeling that they leaned back into it in silence. But then he heard, oh, look. And he did not want to leave that static, warm, peaceful place, but because he loved her so, he did. And his mouth dropped open. The sun had risen high enough to illuminate the whole gaggle of sunflowers, and each one bright light with black shadows behind it, every flower radiant with dew bright crystal clarity and jewel deep colors and a seductive, beckoning, wild beauty. And all he could say was, wow. And then he realized that he would turn his back on this too. And he would crawl back into that self-made shell, and he would curl up around a dark pool of silence and stillness and await in quiet. But he also knew that when he did that, life would come thumping and bumping along and eventually crash right into that shell, causing an enormous fissure, big enough for that rude, raucous, gorgeous hoochie coochie girl of life to come shimmering in, shimmering and shining, and that she would dispel all the darkness with life and laughter and beauty and scent and home and beautiful things all around him. And she would grab him by the collar and she would say, hey, you, I think you're coming with me. And he knew every time, as long as he had breath, he would have no choice but to answer, yes, my love, I will. Yes, I will.
That was marvelous, outstanding. You should put all your stories in a book. I mean, every time I listen to your stories, like, I hope she writes this down so other people can read it. No, you
Vicky, it really
should.
is. And you said that was a new story? You've only told it twice?
Twice.
Yeah,
Wow.
I've never
Ed
heard
has
it.
had to hear every one of them, I think.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
heard. Oh, they're just wonderful. Oh my God.
It's so literary, like it had like a novel, the scope of human consciousness in that story was so vast. And then, the poetic novel was kind of crashed by the raucous sunflowers. That's a Vicky Nessian moment there. Oh my goodness. You are really something. Well, thank you so much. I'm glad we were your third audience.
Well, thank you. It's the genre love stories tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
And I'm in that. And I raised my hand and said I'd tell a love story, but I didn't have one. So now I do.
Yeah. And your stories really seem like they're not created by one person, but they're kind of layered with the wisdom of generations, like a folk tale or epic almost. Anyway, thank you so much. I
Thank
feel
you.
very lucky to have heard it.
Thank you.
So maybe some people will be hearing it for the fourth time tomorrow at Genre Tales.
I'm sorry.
Maybe all of us will be there for round two. Now I want to go. All right. Well, what a way to end our first segment. What a incredible spectrum of stories that was too, from humorous to Vicky's very literary story. We'll take a short break, 5 minutes, and when we come back, we'll have some announcements. And since I don't even know what the question of the month is, I think Katie is going to have to lead that, or else Katie will send me a little secret note in the chat, perhaps. Anyway, I will pause the recording and we will resume at 8:07 or so. It's 8:02 now. Let's see, I can pause it here. Welcome back. I hope you had, it sounded like there was a nice chat going on, mostly about Catherine Fairley. And yeah, wouldn't it be great if our website became an archive and a resource for all of the work she did, a resource for storytellers, a dream. Anyway, welcome back. Now, normally it's about now that we have some announcements, and then we go into the question of the month, which has been sent my way via text, so I know the question of the month. But Katie or Meg, do you want to make some announcements?
I don't think I
I
have.
do.
Meg does, I think.
Okay.
I do. First of all, the genre storytelling tomorrow, and you can hear that story again from Vicky, and I think you could probably hear it many times and never get tired of it. That was just so beautiful. So there's genre, and that is, if you are a SAC member, it is free. You just get on and just listen. If not, it's okay too. It's only a like $5 donation. So they have it every month and it's a different theme. And we are so fortunate to have several of our tellers that regularly participate in the genre storytelling. So that's coming up tomorrow. And if you
And the
need
link
a link
is
or
on
anything,
our website.
not sure about that, Brennan, but go
No,
to
I'm
SAC.
sure about that.
Okay. All right. Good. And then I also got an email from Willie Claflin. Willie Claflin was the inspiration for me to start listening to stories like this. I went to a festival with my mom years ago now, but up in Trinidad, and they had a wonderful storytelling festival, and Willie was the featured teller, and I was just mesmerized. And he's so multi-talented. It's not just stories, but music. And so he is having a presentation, and it is, let's see, it is on the 25th in San Francisco at the Blackbird Bookstore and Cafe from 7 to 9 p.m. It's called Goats, Pandas, Aliens, and Giant Vegetables. And maybe what I can do, Brandon, is send Irma this information so that she can post it up on the website. And I also am really considering just sending it out via our group email, because Willie is exceptional, and he will be part of a storytelling festival that the Sacramento people are doing. Oh, it's right there, right?
It's all there, and
Sacramento
these
Valley.
are all live links.
Yeah.
This is our website.
Yep. Thank you. Great. You can do
So
this
Willie
tech stuff
Claflin's
so
right
good.
here, and you just click on
Mhm.
this.
Mhm.
See?
Irma is really doing good. I love it. Thank you so much to her. Make sure she knows how much we appreciate it. So it's all right there on our website. So
Everything.
You just check those out, because I think that it's rare. Willie does not do that many performances, and I was just so happy to see him back on the circuit, more or less, and doing this. So that's really the announcements that I have, and it looks like you can go to the website and find out all about this good stuff that's happening.
Great.
Okay.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Meg. And yeah, be sure to check out the website. There's a lot of new content on there, in addition to the featured Catherine Fairley Story of the Month. Other announcements? Does anybody else have one? I do see that Cher Christian, this is from Lori, is in the hospital. She's a member of our swap, and she could use our good thoughts. Thank you for posting that, Lori. Anybody else? Okay, so the prompt this month, and this is where we go around, we need to be lean. It's hard when you're a storyteller to be lean, but what do you most look forward to in springtime? And so I am going to introduce myself. I'm Brandon. I am a high school teacher here in Santa Rosa. I've been coming for 5 years or so to the Do Tell Swap. And I look forward to winter is steelhead fishing for me. I'm a fly fisherman, and spring means striped bass. So I look forward to these aggressive fish that move into the wetlands around the bay. And that's what I most look forward to. So I'm going to send it over to Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie Mangan. I live in Santa Rosa. And what do I look forward to? I think it's the green grass, it's the daffodils, it's just everything beginning to bloom again. And I'm always surprised, because in Sonoma County, it seems that winter is so short, and bam, we're in spring. So thank you.
Thanks, Katie. And let's have Kenneth.
Let me unmute myself. There we go. I'm Kenneth Foster. I live in Ephraim, Utah. And what I look for is warm weather. And just having all the plants bloom again. I just love it. So,
Oh, I can feel the joy. Definitely. Thank you, Kenneth. And our fearless leader, Meg.
Yeah, I look forward to that warmer weather as well. But I think it's, spring is new life. And it begins a whole cycle that then just continues on into early summer, and then, it begins fall. And so it's just a really significant part of the year for me. And all of my grandchildren were born in the spring. So I feel like, it really just confirms the new life that cycles through for all of us.
Beautiful. Sharon.
We've got a rain problem up here. There's a Spanish rain god poem about aquí no hay nada sino la lluvia, 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 lluvia. So what I look forward to is every drop of sunshine, every ray of sunshine feels like such a blessing here. I never even noticed it all those years in California, but now I realize and I'm grateful.
Wonderful. I think they count the hours of sunlight in some of the months. Isn't that right? Or anyway, I heard that. I've never really spent too much time up there. And Bev, spring in New York. It's also
Well,
midnight in New York.
everyone knows me in my whole development where I live as Flower Lady. And as the cars go down the street from spring to late fall, they're zooming down and then they slow down to look at my garden and then they step on the gas and leave. And I have a kind of garden they call a clock garden, where every hour on the hour, there's something blooming and opening. And at the end of the day, they start closing. And the last flower of the evening is the moonflower, which blooms around 7:30 and dies at the sunrise in the morning.
Mhm.
And then all the other flowers on the hour, there's always something starting to bloom and some things closing and dying for the day.
Wow.
And that is why I'm Flower Lady, the one with the clock of flowers.
That is absolutely amazing. I've never heard of something like that. Wow.
They have it in a park in Toronto, and it's a round circular garden, and it's a garden clock. The way they have it, it's a round garden, and you can see every hour on the hour something blooms and something dies.
Wow.
And that's
And
where I got the idea. 4 o'clocks. If you've heard of the flower 4 o'clocks, they open at 4. It's true, they do. So I've been gardening since I've been like 2.5, 3 years old, when I loved my grandmother's garden and I wanted my own, and I went next door and I dug up some weeds and I put it on the side of her house. My grandmother found me crying the next day and asked me what was wrong. And I said, I planted my garden, but everything died. And she looked at it and she said, they're weeds, Bev. They're not what you plant. And she took me by the hand and said, come, I'm going to teach you how to garden. And she took me into her garden, and that's how I learned my first real lessons of how to garden, with her beautiful garden that she had.
And now Beth.
Okay. I'm going to check my 4 o'clocks this year, because that's one thing that I seem to have a lot of. I love it. And the gophers don't eat them. I look forward to the return of the red-winged blackbirds. The blackbirds then develop their red epithets, and the yellow mustard, and of course the pink of the early flowering plums. That's just, it's just a palette just to revel in, just love it. So yeah, it's a great time of year right now. It's a little, when it gets warmer, it's not as colorful for me. So thank you.
Beautiful. Elaine.
I'm Elaine Stanley. I live in Santa Rosa, and I look forward to getting up to Maine and seeing a senior snake truly is the first one out. No. I like springtime because it's like the earth is just starting to wake up. And spring feels like a waking up period for everything, for the sun, the warmth, the flowers, everything. And so I enjoy it so much.
Thank you, Elaine. And Vina and her visitors. I think you're muted.
Vina, you need to unmute.
Well, a week ago, I ordered seeds from the catalog, the seed catalog, and today they came. And so the excitement of having these 10 or 15 varieties of vegetables and flowers that it's too early now to plant in a seed bed, but in just another couple of weeks, I'll set those seeds in little rows and mark the rows and very excitedly watch that little nursery start to form and have all those hundreds of plants to put out in the garden. So that's pretty exciting for me.
Very exciting.
I would like to add,
This is Vivian.
we lived in Santa Rosa for a number of years, and that's when we met John and Vina. And we lived in Lake County. And right now we live up in Port Townsend, Washington, which is northernmost part of Washington. We're down here because it's cold up in Port Townsend, and it's about 10 degrees warmer down here. So we came down here for the sun. But up in Port Townsend, the pleasure is seeing the rhododendrons come into bloom. All the neighborhoods have different colors and sizes, and it's just a joy watching these rhododendrons come out in bloom. And they're budding now, and maybe by the time we get back at the end of February, we'll start seeing some blossoms. And then my other best memory of flowers is the wildflowers in Lake County. All through the fields, one big splash of purple or yellow, and then there's a place called Bear Valley where it's basically a valley where cows graze. But the flowers are so numerous and so plentiful, and they're just gorgeous. It's just wonderful. Oh, wait.
Okay, Tom or John? Oh, okay.
All right. Well, thank you. Vicky.
Aside from chocolate bunnies, which I always look forward to, I love this time of year because the color palette is like bright green, just blankets of mustard in yellow, and the trees and the vines, the lines of vines are still black. They have no leaves. And just that color, that bright, almost tinny bright light, and the carpet of mustard, and it's the colors and the light are so sharp and so clear. It's beautiful.
Thank you. And Gay.
Well, I agree with Elaine about spring being an awakening to me. And I can see that with my tulips that are just beginning to show up. This little tiny the beginnings. And it just feels like an awakening.
Lori?
Yeah, I enjoy what everybody else said about spring, but what I especially enjoy is more daylight. I take walks every day and it's like, oh, good, I can walk, as late as 5:30 now and it's not dark yet. So I enjoy the expanded number of hours of daylight to be outdoors in the garden or taking a walk or just being outside on the patio to read and not feeling quite so housebound.
So, Meg, would you like to go next?
Oh, no, I already said my piece.
Oh, you have?
That's good. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, how about if we had Kenneth?
Yeah,
Okay, sorry, Sharon?
yeah.
We haven't heard from Genevieve.
I will pop in. I had not quite realized, because there used to be other trees that were evergreen along my back fence, but they've been gradually been taken down by the owners of the property behind me. So I really love it when my trees, I have liquid ambers in the back. And I love it when they begin to leaf out again. I have a mobile home park behind me. So in the winter, I can see the mobile home park, but then when they leaf out, part of it is just green, and I love that. I also like the surprises that occasionally come just when I've given up in defeat, decided that I just neglect my garden too much. It's never going to look beautiful again. Something happens like what happened this year, which is paper whites just popped up in some pots where I thought I only had soil left. And I had carefully taken care of whatever those bulbs were. I had no idea what they were, and I gathered them up and put them in soil, but I'd forgotten about them. And after the rain, hope springs eternal, just like spring. Spring hopes eternal, and hope springs eternal.
Thank you, Genevieve. Have we lost Brandon?
It looks like it.
Okay, so Lori, has everybody said what they need to say? Okay, Lori, do you want to tell your story? No?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm just going to, just hold on, remove spotlight. There you go. All right, off you go, Lori.
I reached for my favorite cutting board and I was so dismayed. It had kind of cracked. And the reason it's my favorite is because it's just the right size and slenderness, and it's beautiful. My dad had made it for me. He did a lot of wood turning of bowls and other things, and he also made a lot of functional things out of wood. And this had different strips of color. Kenneth will know what I mean. It had white oak and walnut. So there's lighter wood and darker wood. It was just beautiful strips. And I'd used it for a long time, and all of a sudden it started to crack. I thought, oh, darn it. Well, I'm pretty good at letting things go when they've kind of run out of their usefulness. And I knew not to keep using it and have maybe it wasn't sanitary if it got wet or bacteria got in there. But I just couldn't let it go either. No, I've been cleaning other things out. I've let go of piano sheet music. If anybody wants music, I still have a couple drawers full. And socks. Boy, everybody seems to have a lot more socks than they need. So it's so easy. It's gotten easier as I've gone to let go of things. But that cutting board was not going to be easy to let go of because it meant a lot. And I thought, okay, I'll set it aside for when my handyman comes. He's a pretty handy guy and he can fix a lot of things. So I asked him, is there any hope for this? And he says, well, I might be able to fix it, but I'd have to break it apart and then, to glue it to get the segments back in. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to see that. I said, maybe I should just let it go. Because he politely noticed my other wood cutting board in the kitchen, which is totally functional, but didn't comment on that. And it turns out, you know, we met 10 years ago, or actually, in 2010, we first met. And that was the year my dad died. So he knows how dear my dad is to me. And he's seen some of the other wood pieces my dad has made. So he knew why I was asking about this particular board. So I said, you know, don't worry about it. You're fixing other things for me. I'm ready to let it go. But you know what? I don't think I can put it in my recycle bin. Can you just take it home and you can dispose of it? And he goes, oh, okay. He goes, well, how about I feed it to my wood stove? It'll get one more functional use. I said, yeah, that would be fine. And when you do so, just say, bye, Bob, you know, to my dad. And he said, I'll do that. And it was very respectful. So that was okay. I felt like it was a good story, and he was kind about helping me let it go. About a week later, he texts me and said, well, I just finished working for your neighbor. Can I stop by? And I said, sure. So, and of course, we're both still staying masked. I met him out in the driveway. He gets out of his truck, and he hands me something in a bag, and I look, and it's a plastic cutting board. He goes, well, I knew you liked that particular shape and size, so I thought, you know, this is the kind I've liked, so I thought I'd just pick you one up next time I was at that store. And I thought, wow, how kind of you. That was really thoughtful. I went to reach to pay him, and he goes, no, don't worry about it. I just did it because I thought you could, you know, you really like that that size of board. And so we chat a little bit more, and then I started to head inside. And then he goes, oh, wait a minute. And he goes in his truck and he pulls out this cutting board. And I'm like, that looks like Dad's cutting board. And I'm like, oh no, he didn't have the heart to burn it. I'm gonna have to get rid of it myself after all. And I was like, okay, it's not that hard to do. Put it in the yard waste bin. It's not going to the landfill. It'll go back to the earth where it came from. I was like getting myself prepared. And as he handed it to me through the mask, I could see him kind of smiling, and he could see my hesitation to take it. And he said, just take a look. And I felt it, and it was good as new. I couldn't see where he had actually had to break it apart and glue it in two places because it was really starting to split. It was just beautiful. It was totally restored. He said, well, I took it home and I thought, you know, I've got time over the weekend. Why don't I just see what I can do with it? So he had glued it together and put clamps on it to make sure it would dry and cure with strength and not warp. I couldn't tell where the wood had been splitting. It was such a beautiful gesture for him. And it was a lesson in, yes, it's good to let go of things when they've run out of their use, but it's also good to realize there's ways to renew things. And it's especially good to receive gifts of kindness.
No, Lori, that was really beautiful. I caught most of it, I think. I'm sorry, I got cut off earlier. What is that Japanese art of molding things back together? And it's a really
It's called kintsugi.
kintsugi. Yeah, but in this case, the cracks weren't even visible of this cutting board, were they?
Well, yeah, I mean, I could feel it was starting to come apart. You could see it was
Yeah.
like a seam. It was tearing in cloth. You could see it was coming apart, which is why I asked him to see if he could fix it, because I knew it wasn't going to hold up.
Wow, thank you, Lori. It's so nice to see you again.
Glad to be back. Thank you.
Very good. And next up, please welcome to our stage, Katie Mangan.
Thank you, Brandon. This is a very, very new story. So here we go. It's called Women Cry When They're Happy. Well, hello there. It's Shirley Ann. Oh, I'm so lovely. Happy to see you. I come from England, from a tiny village. It's so tiny, it's hardly worth putting it on the map. Well, recently, I went to California on my holidays for a couple of weeks. I went to see a dear friend. Well, you know, to get anywhere these days, it takes you 24 hours, doesn't it? I left my house in the early morning, and there in the sky was the moon, almost full, just hanging there. Well, I took the bus and I went to Heathrow Airport. Well, you know, it takes a while. You check, check your bags, and then you have to go through security and passport control. And finally, you get onto the plane and you sit down. Well, they then told us it was going to take 11 hours, the flight. Ooh, my seat seemed very small and cramped. Halfway through the flight, I thought I'd wander down to the galley, and there was a nice flight attendant. She said, "Would you like a cup of tea?" Oh, I said, "Yes, please." So with my cup of tea, she gave me a couple of biscuits. You call them cookies. Well, they were my favorite kind. They were McVitie's digestive biscuits, and they have one side covered with chocolate. As I was having my tea and my biscuit, I looked out of the window. Way, way down below, I could see Greenland. You know, I just felt suspended. It was really a very strange feeling. Well, at last we made the final approach to San Francisco. Then I was so alarmed, I looked out of the window. All I could see was water. How did the captain know about this? Where was the runway? We hit it. Oh, thank God. Everybody applauded. I mean, were they happy just to be back in America? Or was it because the captain had finally found the runway? Well, as we taxied in, I looked out the window. You know, there were no clouds to be seen, not like England. It was so bright, like all the lights have been turned on. No wonder why you wear sunglasses all the time. Well, I found my bags and I went to passport control. Ugh. Well, there was this very grumpy man, you know, sitting in his little box. He asked me a strange question. He said, "Do you have any chocolate?" I thought, what's how odd, because I never leave home without it. I wondered if I should offer him a piece. I never answered his question. I think he got bored because he stamped my passport. I was officially here. Well, I walked out into that great hall, you know, with everybody milling around and meeting their loved ones. And I panicked. I thought there's going to be nobody here to meet me. That's when I heard somebody calling my name. "Shirley Ann, Shirley Ann." Oh, it was my dear friend, Katie Mangan. There she was. She was wrapping her arms around me. Oh, we both started to laugh and to cry, because women, they laugh and they cry. Well, on the drive home, I think I slept, except for when we crossed the Golden Gate Bridge. What a view. And I looked out and there were these people, you know, they were rollerblading, they were cycling, they were running, they were walking across the bridge. But it just seemed like we were all suspended in time. I'm wondering if it was my jet lag. Well, when we got back to Katie's house, she asked me if I'd like a cup of tea. I said, "Oh, yes, please." And you know what she served me? Were my favorite biscuits. I said, "Where did you find them?" She said they came from a store called Cus Plus. Do you know it? Anyway, after a tea and our biscuits, we went out into her backyard and she showed me around. Oh, got a lot of native plants, a lot of sages. Oh, don't they smell good? Well, you know, the joke is, Katie doesn't know the name of any of those plants. But to give her credit, she does know the birds in her backyard. Oh, she could tell me the names of all of them. So I saw this bird. It was a brown bird, like a British thrush, but it had an orange breast. I said, "What's that one?" Well, she said it was a robin. Oh, I said, "Katie, don't be daft. A robin is half that size, has a bright red breast." She just smiled at me. I began to think maybe a homesick English person had named that bird. Well, after dinner, before I went to bed, we went outside and stood on the driveway. looked out towards the hills. There was the moon, just like I'd seen it when I left my house in the morning. Just the same, almost full, just hanging there. And then we listened. We could hear the frogs. She said I might hear an owl during the night, even coyotes. Whew. I was in the Wild West after all. Oh, we had such a lovely time. From the mountains to the ocean, we saw everything in between. But soon it was time for me to leave. Of course, I was sad. We both were sad. Katie told me she was going to drive me back to the airport. But then she became quiet. She told me about how when they take their daughters back after their visits, how they're sad. You know, everything's fine until suddenly they're just by security and they realize their daughters have to leave. And they all start to cry. And they just hug them one last time, wondering when they'll see them again. You know, men and women, they cry when they're sad. I told Katie I would take the airporter back. And so we went down to the fairgrounds and waited for the bus. Well, once my bag had been put in the hold, we had to say goodbye. Of course, we cried. But then we started to laugh because, well, we'd had such fun. The women do, they cry and they laugh. They can do both together. My flight back was uneventful, went really fast. And I took the bus from the airport back to the town nearest to my village. When I got off the bus, there was a taxi. And so I got the taxi and I texted my husband, Len, to say I was about 15 minutes away from home. He was standing by the front door. I was so happy to see him. Maybe I did cry. He said, "Love, would you like a cup of tea?" Oh, I said, "Yes, please." So we went into the kitchen. He put the kettle on. He made a proper pot of British tea. You know, I don't think Katie has a teapot in her house. Oh, it was so lovely to have that cup of tea. And he also got my favorite biscuits. He thought I hadn't eaten any since I'd been away. He wanted to take me into the back garden, show me what he'd done when I was away. There was a little bird sort of fluttering around. And I realized it was the robin that lives in our back garden. There it was in its spring plumage. Oh, looking so handsome and fine, its bright red breast. And then it began to sing. I was so happy. I began to cry. Have I ever told you? Women cry when they're happy. Blessings, abundance, healing to you all.
Wow. That was so neat to meet yourself through the eyes of Shirley Ann.
Yeah.
She's not
What
very
a
impressed.
treat that was. I've never seen you do that before. That was really wonderful. And I hope it helps you gain a perspective on the vast sadness, you feel when you say goodbye to your girls at the airport because they live far away. I know. Oh, Katie, how beautiful that was. And the reincorporation of the robin at the end was a very nice touch. Beautiful. And the line where you're landing the airplane's landing and there's water everywhere. I worry about that all the time. And does the captain know? That was fantastic.
I worry about it too.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I got that story at 10 o'clock on Saturday night. So pretty cool. Shirley Ann's amazing. She does deliver.
Well, like Kenneth was saying, you know, it's about character, and her character really is the story. It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. I think you might be up next.
Well, we have Diamond, I think,
Okay, Diamond, is she still with us?
and I can certainly pause the recording. Let's see, I need Diamond to unmute. Very good. And are you able to turn your camera on?
Oh, I don't have a camera.
Okay, so I won't be able to spotlight you, but
Oh, that's
okay, and you wanted me to pause the recording, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And I'm going to invite tellers back to the stage. So we had Beth with a squirrel story. And I love how that ended with the amazing fact it ate 2 biscuits after all these crazy things happened. And you end with this phenomenal accomplishment of 2 biscuits being eaten. Sharon, thank you for your story. We always love hearing you. And of course, Kenneth. And Lori, if you turn your camera on, I'll be able to bring you up. Katie. Or should I call you Shirley Ann? Elaine. And Vicky. Oh, we have so many tellers tonight. And let's see, who else?
Is Bev still with us?
I think Bev might have left.
Yeah, okay.
And let's see, do I have everyone who's here now?
I think
Who's
you
still
do.
here?
Yes.
Well, look at everybody. We had a lot of stories, and we had a lot of a tremendous range as well. And I would put Diamond up here, but I can't without a camera, but we have Diamond still with us as well. And I want to thank all the tellers for really giving me a lot to think about. And I've missed you all very much. I'm glad to be back. A month is going to go by so fast and so slow at the same time. So I'll be looking forward to next month, March, and more stories from everybody. Thank you all for coming tonight. And thanks to Meg Brown and Katie Mangan. Katie was on tech duty tonight. So thank you to Katie for doing all the camera work. And we'll see everyone next month.
Thank you, Brandon, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That's wonderful.
Great stories, guys. Thanks so much. See you next